Good evening, everybody, and welcome to an edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan. We're at the Motor City Madmouth, and I tell you, we have ourselves a great crew tonight, and I am really excited about this show tonight. To give you an idea, we're bringing in Jack Perconte, who played for the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Chicago White Sox, Seattle Mariners, and at that time, the Cleveland Indians. And with us tonight, Jack, we want to welcome you. We got Rick, Mr. Opinion Curti. We have Lou Landers, and of course, Eric Katz, who's known for his concrete dump. Shame on you for not putting it on your bio, but that's okay. He knows what his identity is. And first of all, Jack, we want to thank you very much for joining us here on the Sports Exchange.
Thanks for having me on, Scott, and looking forward to it. And and nothing better than talking baseball and sports. So glad to be here.
Well, I got to tell you, Jack, the first time I had ever heard about you was at the 1981 baseball winter meetings at the Diplomat Hotel in Hollywood, Florida. I happened to be eating lunch with Al Campanis. I happened to be eating with Tommy Lasorda and Steve Brenner, the PR guy. I heard that you were traded, to the Cleveland Indians with Rick Sutcliffe in exchange for Jorge Orta, Larry White, and Jack Fimple. So, let's talk about your Dodgers career a little bit and then your thoughts about when the trade occurred.
Well, my Dodger career was mostly AAA baseball, because I was stuck behind Davey Lopes for a number of years. And then when they were finally ready, Davey got hurt a little and they were ready to make a move. They kind of jumped over me and took Steve Sachs up. And so the writing was definitely on the wall that I wouldn't be a Dodger for too long. But my time there was basically 2 months, the end of 1980 and the end of 1981. And even though they were just 2 months, they were so exciting to be part of the Dodgers. And, they always were very good at the time. And the 80 team, we were in a right down to the wire with the Astros. And I played in a few of those games. And then 81, of course, was the year they went on and won the World Series. And it was a strange year in 81 because of the strike, so we had a loaded Albuquerque AAA team, but none of us had anywhere to go because, of the strike. So we just all were down there. There was no moves going up or down. So, but anyway, my Dodger time was just wonderful. And I was fortunate to get a World Series trophy and ring out of it from 81. And I couldn't ask for anything more.
Yeah, let's talk about that World Series ring. I know when we talked about it last week that the Dodgers were really classy enough to give you that ring, even though you were there for a short period of time. Why don't you tell us the story behind the classy way for how they handled it and everything that went along with it?
Well, yeah, you just never know, what I think the players in that vote on shares, how much people get. And then I don't know who decides on rings and trophies, but yeah, it was just, when those arrived in the mail, it was just a dream come true, and excuse me, there's players that much more accomplished than me never got a World Series ring, obviously. And so for me to have one, it doesn't always seem fair, but it's one of my great memories, I guess.
So tell me about the highlight of your career.
Well, I would say on a personal basis, there was 2 of them. With the Dodgers, those games I mentioned, we had 3 games to play against the Astros. We had to win all 3 in order to force a 1-game playoff in 1980. And I played in all those games. And in the, I believe it was the Saturday game of the week, I was in at second base and the Astros had runners on first and third and 2 outs in the 9th inning, and I'm out there praying the ball doesn't get hit my way, but it was, and I made the play. And so that's, I would have been a GOAT forever if I didn't make it, but I made the play. So I felt great. And it was very routine, but under the circumstances, I always felt it was the best play I ever made. And then in 1984, when I was with the Mariners once again on a personal basis, I tied the Mariner record on the last day of the season for hits at the time, which was 180. And my 180th hit was off the great Tom Seaver. So that on a personal basis, that was just incredible. Earlier, guys, we talked about Carl Yastrzemski a little bit, and I actually caught the last ball that he ever hit in a big league game when I was with the Indians. I caught a pop-up, so it's kind of a good trivia question I always ask people. But so those, I guess, are my three personal highlights. There's a lot of team highlights, I guess, but on a personal basis, that's those three.
Well, didn't you say you got a hit off of Roger Clemens as well?
Well, I did. Yeah, that was cool. But like I say, it was before we really knew he was going to be one of the greatest of all time. Okay. So he still threw very hard, and I got a double off him. But I've gone back in the records and looked it up to make sure I was right, and it's there. So I feel really good about that.
Oh, why not? If you get a hit off of Roger Clemens, no matter when you get it, at least it's something you can talk about to people like myself and the rest of my crew for sure. I mean, hey, how many people can say they hit Roger Clemens in the big leagues, whenever the case may be? And we're not going where most people want to think we're going to go there. So, all right, so let's talk about what you've done off the field, because one of the things I really like to do when I bring on new guests here, it's not only what you accomplished on the field, but it's what you've done as well. I know that before we get to that, you were traded. Believe it or not, the baseball winter meetings always seem to be an interesting time for you, because I know on December 7th, 1983, by the way, my mother's birthday is born on December 7th, and not 83. She was born on the bombing of Pearl Harbor, but no, Mom, it's okay. But you were traded with the Cleveland Indians, with Gorman Thomas to the Seattle Mariners for exchange for Tony Bernazard. What's so interesting about your trades is who you went with. 1 minute you go with Rick Sutcliffe, and then the next you go with Gorman Thomas. So if they're going to include you, at least they put you in a halfway decent package anyways.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I was just the throw-in on both, but, they were such great players and good friends at the time. So it's just cool to know you're going somewhere and you already know somebody, in the clubhouse that was a teammate before. So that's always comforting, so. But yeah, I was just a throw-in guy on those, but it felt good at the time to be moving on, because my careers were kind of stuck at the time in both places.
Well, it's a good trivia question nevertheless. So, all right, as I mentioned moments ago, one of the things I always like to do when I bring on new guests is not only what you did on the field, but what you've done off of it. And let's talk about the books that you've written. You wrote a book on creating a season to remember, now out, I believe. Is that correct? And then, which is now out, creating a season to remember, which is now out. Then you have another one, The Making of a Hitter and Raising an Athlete. So those were published in 2009. Then you have another one, Baseball, the Magazine. Talk to me about each and every one of those books.
Well, my first one was The Making of a Hitter, and that was kind of, information I gained from teaching hitting to kids for all the years after I got out of the game. And so I thought it was a way of, helping kids. Unfortunately, times have changed on how we teach hitting now. It's not put the ball in play anymore and hit ground balls and line drives through the infield. It's more drive the ball. So the book is kind of out of date as far as what it taught, but at the time it was very helpful, I think, to a lot of people and did well. My next book was Raising an Athlete, and I kind of realized that being around kids and their parents for so long, a lot of parents really didn't know how to go about helping their kids to advance, and in a lot of ways they are impediment to their kids' careers, So I thought I could put into writing what I had learned on raising my own kids and then helping kids in their careers. So I wrote that book. And then later I realized coaches, a lot of them, they mean so well, but they had no training and didn't know how to go about helping kids and teams and dealing with kids, and dealing with their parents too, which has become a big issue. So I wrote Creating a Season to Remember. And then my last book is actually a marathon running book that just came out the last 6 months, and it's called The Success Trail. And it's a book about, I've run 15 marathons now, and it's just kind of a fun look at running and once again the things I've learned on how to I kind of incorporated how I made the major leagues along with how I finished marathons and kind of put those into a book, and to help athletes once again to maybe have the mental strength to persevere and get through the hardships of their careers. And for me now running, so I still run marathons, and it was helpful to kind of put it all down on paper.
You know what amazes me when I look at the title of each book, and I'll break them down a little bit. Creating a Season to Remember is neat in its own right when you think about it. The Making of a Hitter, of course, nowadays, like you say, everything changes. And then Raising an Athlete. Then you have Baseball, the magazine. I believe you were a writer there. Is that correct?
Correct.
So
yeah.
obviously you have some exceptional writing skills. And then you talked about the book. So when you put a lot of those skills into writing, what is it that type of gratification do you get out of it? Not only writing for Baseball, the magazine, but your books as well.
Well, once again, I tell everybody, if you feel like you have knowledge that maybe other people don't have, then you should write it down and pass it on, And so I just self-publish my own books, so I don't go out trying to, get publishers and that. I just feel like I know things that maybe others haven't from all my experience, and not to sound, cocky or anything, but once again, I feel like I know things that others haven't, and so it's worth writing. And I really enjoy writing. When I write, my mind really obviously goes to work, and I think it's fascinating how you can say the same thing in 5 or 6 or 10 different ways, and so to try to figure out the best way to say things is a lot of fun for me, and so that's part of it too, and it just, once again, I sold my own business about 15 years ago, and I realized I had a brain, and that's when I started writing, and it's just something I enjoy doing.
Yeah, and that business that I have in front of me, the Jack Perconte Sports Academy, I believe you ran that from January of '88 to October of 2006. That was like 18 years, 10 months. So, you talk about baseball and softball school. Tell me, did you take a lot of pride in running that academy?
Oh, absolutely. I tell everybody I found something after my career that I enjoyed more than playing baseball, and that was working with kids. And so that's been really the love of my life. And so to be able to do that and do it in an academy the way I wanted to do it, it was just so enjoyable. It just got to the point where it was just overwhelming, and so I felt like I had to get away from it, and I still teach, but I just do it on a smaller basis and just go in and, rent facilities out instead of having my own.
Well, at the end of the show, we're going to give you an opportunity to let people know how they can get a hold of your books. One thing I want to get into, that I'm going to turn it over to Lou, okay? And that's the Universal Designated Hitter. The collective bargaining agreement is now complete. The National League has it. The American League has had it. Did you like the way? Do you like the Universal Designated Hitter? Me personally, I always like when the pitcher hit, but I realize the time has come that obviously you do have it.
Yeah, I've always been for it myself. I never enjoyed watching pitchers hit, and it's I know it takes away a little bit of the managing part of it, but then I like seeing the best pitchers stay in the games too, and the best hitters be up there batting. And so I've always been for it. It gives more jobs to big league hitters and keeps them around longer, a lot of the stars and that. So yeah, I'm for it.
Yeah, Don Mattingly told me on Sunday when I was covering the Marlins against the Astros up at Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium that he's a guy, obviously, being a New York Yankee, had no trouble acclimating to it because he played with the Yankees. So therefore, it was an easy adaptation. I know my pal Lou Landers is chomping at the bit. So Lou, why don't you take it away? Obviously, there's a lot of different things about the game of baseball that we certainly want to bring Jack into. And of course, Rick Curti and Eric Katz are patiently waiting to provide their input on these as well. Go ahead, Lou.
Well, one of the things Jack hit on was opening up jobs for other players, which I agree with. I would also say that extending the career of players is definitely up there. Just look at Albert Pujols, for instance, just signed back with the Cardinals where it all started for him. He doesn't get a job if there's no universal DH. He's a perfect platoon option. They brought in Corey Dickerson earlier in the offseason. Perfect platoon situation there. Nelson Cruz into his 40s, still mashing the baseball. And that's a guy that's basically been a DH for a decade now, plus deficiencies in the outfield, but great with the bat. So that's something to consider. And then, of course, the obvious, with there being maybe 5 pitchers who are adequate hitters, the rest of them not so much. And with all the money invested in players nowadays, I don't want my $30 million pitcher going up there and tweaking a muscle, getting hit by a pitch, whatever it might be, and then losing them for a amount of time. And then how about if they happen to get on base, which does happen the odd time, running the bases? It's not something I want to take a risk at, especially when you can pay a hitter to specifically do it. Some teams in the American League are more in the fact that they have one particular player for the spot. They've started to kind of have a rotating door in the American League. I think in the National League, that's going to be the case a lot more. Guys who are maybe 33, 34 and up are going to get a couple days off a week, not from the game, but from being on their feet for 9 innings and get to kind of play. The Dodgers are a great example of one with Justin Turner, who's a great bat. He's getting up there in age. A way to keep him fresh would be to throw him in DH spot couple times a week, whatever it might be. That's just one example, but I think it's overall best for the game, especially with all the interleague play we have now with 15 teams in each league. For so long there was 16 in the NL with the Astros and 14 in the American League. Now with there always being at least one interleague series, these teams should be playing under the same rules.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything you said, Lou.
Let me incorporate something in the chat that Mark Pricer mentioned that the NL DH should have happened 10 years ago, and that's how far behind MLB is. So do any of you guys want to comment on that?
Well, I'm going to go in the opposite way, and I'm not a fan of the DH. I've always been more of a National League fan. I like seeing the pitchers hit. My thing is, if you're on the field, you should bat, and I love seeing people like Greg Maddux and John Smoltz. There's some good hitting pitchers out there and a lot of athletic pitchers there, and I've just never been a big fan of the DH. I understand what Lou's saying, that they can get injured running the bases. I mean, they can get injured, a line drive to the head if, a guy hits the ball fast. So, I mean, injuries happen, it can happen around the bases. People get injured. It just happens. But I knew it was coming. I'm not surprised by it. So I never really got too upset about it because I knew it was coming eventually, the universal DH. So, but I'm fine with it because I knew eventually that it would come.
Rick, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do the research because I don't think you're going to be able to do it off the top of your head. I'd be very impressed if you could. Find me 10 pitchers in the last 20 years who were career even 245 hitters and up, because I don't think you'll find it.
Probably not. I mean, I just
that's the point. You mentioned
Maddux was a great hitter. Smoltz was a great hitter. Glavine, Bob Force were great hitters.
DeGrom, Madison, Bumgarner, Greinke. Those guys aren't bad from current days, but they're not lighting the world on fire. I mean, it was so much easier to navigate an NL lineup with a pitcher there. The 8-hitter barely saw anything to hit, and it was honestly almost an automatic out.
Yeah.
And
I think the other thing is pitchers are a lot of great pitchers. You got to pull them in the 4th, 5th, 6th inning because their team is down a few runs, but they got to get back in the game. And, it's.
How about Fernando? He was so good. The Dodgers use him as a pinch hitter sometimes.
Yeah,
Fernando Mania.
Yeah. Excuse me.
And you know what? You might still see that with certain pitchers nowadays, to save a bench spot. If you want to save a bench spot or a bench bat or something, certain pitchers will go up there and take some hacks. It's possible.
In regards to DH, it should have happened as soon as Ron Blomberg stepped up to the plate. I just think that, yes, there are some pitchers who are very good at hitting. I will give you that. But I mean, all right, injuries happen, but I'd rather them get hurt doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is pick up ball, throw ball over the plate, and hope some guy doesn't take it to the third deck. I just think that it should have happened as soon as Ron Bloomberg stepped up to the plate. And I just think that, if my pitcher is going to get hurt, I'd rather him doing what he's supposed to be doing, not doing situations he could easily avoid.
Well, I remember, I think it was A.J. Burnett a few years ago, maybe even 5 years ago now with the Pirates. He got hurt in spring training, batting practice, practicing bunting, and he missed 3 months because he wasn't even in a game. It was batting practice, them trying to bunt. I mean, that can't happen when you have all this money and stuff invested into these pitchers.
there wasn't a whole lot of money there because A.J. Burnett was like through at that point in his career. So, you want to get.
Yeah, I think the Yankees were paying him to be on the Pirates, but
it was before that too. I think when they they gave him to the Pirates, and the Yankees were paying part of that contract because his arm just gave out. But as far as that goes, there wasn't a whole ton of money invested there. Essentially, the Pirates are getting him for free, and he was through at that point in his career. I think arguably when he got traded to Philadelphia, he was done even upon arrival.
Yeah, and I remember Chen Ming Wong. I don't know if you guys remember him.
I do.
He was a great pitcher for a few years. I think back-to-back 18 or 19 game winner. And then interleague play, he's rounding third base, completely messed up. He had an Achilles or something like that. Guy was never the same. Career pretty much down the drain because he was rounding the bases. Something he never had to do in the American League.
I just think that, that you have situations that can be avoided, especially hitting, running the base, whatever. If he's going to get hurt, fine. If he throws his arm out, fine. That's just what the job entails. But if I can avoid having him pick up a bat and with the potential of some guy who's more wild than Nuke Lelouch, then I'm willing to take my chances there.
Well, and I think the rules should just be the same for both leagues, whatever they are. So to have two different, sets of rules just doesn't make sense for the top level of anything.
Or having American League umpires and National League umpires. I'm glad they got rid of that because, some, especially like in an All-Star game or World Series, it could be very, very tricky. So I'm glad they got rid of that as well.
Right.
I mean, they're all the same at the end of the day. They're going to call balls and strikes, but you'd rather not have a whole fan vote at the end of the year. At least social media didn't exist back then of which umpires are worse.
Joe West.
Besides Country Joe. I'd probably say Angel Hernandez is the worst.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Umpires do tend to have completely different strike zones, though. I mean, there really is a thing called pitchers umpires and hitters umpires.
Yeah, which in that case, if the pitchers are smart, they figure out which I don't know if they receive scouting reports or not on this, but
they do.
Although the strike zones are never consistent, though, as far as I've seen.
No, but some guys will get that high pitch above the belt. Some guys will get that pitch just below the knees. Some umpires call more east-west. Some call more north-south. Some have a smaller strike zone. I mean, so I do a lot of fantasy baseball content, and that's something that sometimes is overlooked when you're playing in the fantasy game and you have a pitcher with a pitcher's umpire that night. You want him in your lineup versus when there's a hitter's umpire. Those are just small things to consider, but that's why I know one of the topics, Scott, you wanted to talk about potentially was automated strike zone. And for a long time, I was so against it, but because of what I'm just talking about with so many different strike zones every single night from different umpires, maybe there should be an automated strike zone so that it is the same game to game, pitcher to pitcher, umpire to umpire.
I think an automated strike zone would be great for the game. I mean, you just have kind of one specific thing. It's no longer a judgment call. It doesn't become a situation where, if it's just one zone, then you'll see less ejections, and pitchers and batters won't complain. It's between fair and unfair because obviously you can't please both parties.
Yeah, in fact, we got another comment from Mark Pricer. That's one of the things that we're going to address anyways, but I'll get it out there ahead of time. And that's the next thing about banning the shift. So with that said, Jack, what are your thoughts about banning the shift?
I think baseball needs to make changes, and if that's the one they feel that's will help the game, then go for it. I don't know that much about it. I mean, I've always been the type that, use the whole field and, adjusted to the defense as a hitter, trying to control where you're trying to hit the ball. But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. And if it helps the game, I think it's worth a try. So I'm not against it. And I don't know. Lou probably would know the analytics a lot more than me, but I think if it helps the game in general to be more watchable, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pull-heavy hitters, and there's people who take the approach of, well, they're professional hitters. They should be able to hit the ball where it's pitched. And Jack, you would actually be able to speak to this more, being an instructor and going up through the minor leagues. Are they teaching that? Do they try to teach take the ball where it's hit, or do they kind of let guys do their natural thing and stand in there? If they're pull heavy, let them be pull heavy.
I believe most kids are taught to use the field and handle the bat, but I believe, the money is with the home runs now, so it doesn't pay to be a spray hitter and hit 310, but 5 home runs when you can hit 25 home runs and get paid millions of dollars. So I think the agents and everybody has realized that the money's with the home runs. So even though kids at a younger age learn to use the whole field, I think when they get stronger and get into professional ball, even college, it's all about the home runs to get paid. And so I think it's drifted in that regard. So like you say, a lot of these guys could go out and hit the ball the other way, but if it's going to produce a single, they don't want it. They want the chance to hit the home runs and get the big power numbers. And so everything's based on that nowadays. So I would say, like I say, if the shift, getting rid of it helps the game to be a little more watchable. And
well, everybody is so obsessed with the home run, for sure. I agree with that. And there's a lot to kind of comes into it with regards to if you are more offensive friendly or if you like the pitcher's duel. I mean, I love a pitcher's duel 1-0 into the 8th inning, starters both in the game. The problem with that is it barely exists anymore because pitchers, if they go 5 innings, it's a pretty good start. Bullpens have kind of taken over now. So many big arms coming out of the bullpen. The analytics say second time through the order is enough for a pitcher. The third time through, they get hit harder, so they go to the bullpen. So at this point, I want to see offense. And second and third, 2 outs, bottom of the 8th, big time at bat, ball drilled up the middle, a clean base hit up the middle, wasn't happening anymore because of the shift. They were just playing the second baseman or shortstop right behind the second base bag. It becomes a routine ground ball. I miss those days of that clutch seeing eye single through the 5-6 hole, let's say, or whatever it might be. So for me, I'm good with them banning the shift.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the problem is, the home runs and the swings that guys put out to get them. You're going 15, 18 minutes sometimes without a ball ever being put in play, and I think that's the issue that makes it unwatchable is there's just no action, and so we got to figure out a way where, so much time doesn't go by and there's not one ball in play and there's, walks, strikeouts, or home runs, and that's the whole game, and so pitcher duels are great, but not if there's never, like you say, never balls going through the infield or contact, and that gets tough to watch, I believe.
Yeah, or the swinging bunt down the third baseline where there's no third baseman because of the shift. Right. I mean, sure, it happens, but another thing is with these hitters and the shift, and everyone is taking it so literal, banning the shift. They're not banning shifting. They're banning having 3 guys on one side of the infield. I mean, growing up playing baseball, there was a lefty up. As a shortstop, I would slide over much closer to second base. I just wouldn't be on the right side of the infield. So they're not banning people from shifting. They're just banning people from being 3 or 4 people on one side and basically having 4 outfielders against lefties per se.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's, they're not just moving on that side, like you say, they're halfway in the outfield too for guys that can't run. So it's like 6 outfielders. So that, yeah, I think in that regard, getting rid of it would be a good thing.
Hey, the only time 6 outfielders would be any good, anyways, if you had to play a game at the LA Coliseum like they did many years ago when the Dodgers first moved there. I couldn't help it since, we talked a little bit about LA, we talked about the Coliseum. Coliseum just recently had a NASCAR race, so they've used that building for just about everything on the planet. And once upon a time, the Dodgers did move there before they went to Chavez Ravine. Uh-huh. So, yeah, you had players, all those rules go off the table when you're talking about the LA Coliseum. So we have our man, Mike Pricer. He's really into this, Lou. I'm telling you, he's matching which ends with you. We almost feel like we have a 6th guest here with Mike Pricer.
I used to do shows with Mark Pricer, similar to these, actually. He's a very good guy, big football guy. Going to be helping him draft a baseball team on Thursday night. Hopefully I didn't let the cat out of the bag, Mark, that you have a ghost runner, per se, on the field for you. I'll be helping him out Thursday night.
Oh, well, we got 5 co-hosts, but you might as well add Mark as basically the 6th. Continue on, Lou. I know we've covered a lot of ground, but I know we have a lot more to go. Keep it rolling.
Well, Rick and Eric have been kind of quiet here the past few minutes, so I'm going to turn something over to them. Rick, the larger bases coming into play, do you have any thoughts on that? Why do it? What the purpose is? Feelings one way or the other?
No idea. I think it's stupid. I think banning the shift is stupid. How can you get rid of strategy, for goodness sakes? I mean, we're watering these games down so much. These guys are professional hitters. I mean, they used the shift on Ted Williams. He hit 406, okay? How can you get rid of strategy like that? I mean, what's next? Are they going to make switch hitters bat left-handed because it's an unfair advantage to the pitcher? I mean, it's gotten silly. I understand you got to make the game better. You got to make the game faster and all that, but doing stuff like that is not going to help the game. You want to know what's going to bring fans back? Lower the cost of food at the concession stands, lower price tickets, lower parking, because the game has gotten so expensive. That's why people are not going. But getting rid of, putting extra large bases, banning the shift, that's not going to help the game. It's to me, it's just watering it down. And I want to see a 2-1 game. I don't want to see Aaron Judge or Stan, striking out 190 times a year, hitting 210 with 45 home runs. I mean, that's just not baseball to me. So, I mean, doing all this stuff just because it's the home runs and all this stuff, to me, it's kind of silly. But the extra bases, I just think that's probably one of the most dumbest things I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I don't know the exact reason behind it, and I usually know the answer to almost everything, so it's a little surprising. But I think the idea is for safety purposes, guys sliding in hard to bases, more room for them to kind of slide around a
I remember when they would when it'd be a close play at first, and sometimes I seen a runner sprain his ankle because he was trying to get the tippy toe of the base. So I think that might be the logic to it, but I mean, they've never said why they're doing it. They just said, we're going to make the bases larger. And it's like, okay, but why? And if they just came out and said, that's why we're doing it, then good, I'm okay with it. But just say why you're doing it instead of just like this Ghost Runner thing. I mean, I feel like I'm watching a horror movie. I mean, that's another silly thing they're doing. There's some things I do like what they're doing, but banning the shift, extra large bases, Ghost Runners, and I can tell you something about the automatic strike zones. The Atlantic League of Professional Baseball has been experimenting with stuff like that, and I've seen a game with it, and it's not good because the computer cannot tell ball and strike. And, we've been talking about robot umpires, in other shows. And what it is that it's not going to be like a robot umpire. It's the computer. And what it is that the umpire has an earpiece. And so he's getting told that the computer called it a strike, so you're going to see a delayed reaction. Those things are on the ground. It's a strike. I've seen high strikes. I've seen low strikes. That's not going to help the game at all. You got to put the human element in the game, and to me, they're just putting too much computers and technology into it. And to me, that's not baseball.
No, if they're gonna do it, it has to be mastered. It has to be perfect.
Yeah.
There can't be balls in the dirt being called strikes. I
Yeah.
agree with you, Eric. Your thoughts on the big bases? Is it just me, or am I thinking of softball where they have that little orange base at first base? They have the white one and the orange one. Is that what they're doing, or?
I think they're just trying. They're trying to add more action to the game by having more runners on. But to me, I don't think it'll make a difference because at the same time though, they're trying to give it advantage. So they're trying to kind of go the route of kind of football where the rules favor the offense more. But I really don't see it. I think it's, I still think though, I mean, essentially the defense is going to have an even easier time when the ball is hit to them, like on a bang play, they'll have an easier time putting their foot down the bag rather than falling off the bag or stepping in the wrong place where eventually they could come down with an injury. I just I don't see it. Again, this is I'm not sure who's worse of a commissioner than in baseball, Bowie Kuhn or Rob Clownfred, excuse me.
Scott, back to you.
Oh, I'm not commenting on the commissioner one. So if you want to, I don't know, Jack, are you into the old commissioner stuff? You had to deal with Bowie Kuhn back in the day. And I personally like Peter you brought because anybody that could go ahead and turn a profit with the Olympics isn't bad in my opinion. So I don't know. Do you want to dive into that territory at all?
Yeah, I don't know enough about any of them, so I don't.
All right, so let's talk about some of the other things that come to mind. And first and foremost, okay, being a traditionalist, the pitch clock has been talked about where you have 14 seconds with no runners on, 19 seconds with runners on. Jack, to me, is that a theory that's come of age that we can get used to doing this? Because I know they've experimented with the minor leagues.
Yeah, I think all these things they're experimenting with and trying to figure out what's going to help, Like I say, I just deal with kids mostly, and kids don't watch the game, And so if we can figure out ways to get them back watching games, I think I'm all for it. So to think of anything that might help to make it more exciting and get kids watching again, I'm all for it. And to have World Series games go on and they get over at midnight and, kids saw the first 2 innings and went to bed. I mean, things like that. I like for the game to be grown, and I don't see where it's going to be grown if we don't do something about the way it's going and make it more watchable. And so, I don't know the answers. I don't know any of the research on.
Jack, have you ever asked any of the kids why they don't watch the games? Is it
too boring, too
long, too boring, not enough action?
Too long. Yeah, absolutely. It's always been too boring. They don't even watch World Series games anymore, which is kind of sad, and I'll ask kids all the time, who's in it? And a few know, but if their parents told them, but and I just think that's a shame. I'd like to see it,
Look, I played a lot of baseball growing up, but most of what I learned was watching the games, watching them from first pitch to the end, even if they were 5.5 or 6 hours.
Absolutely. And then one of the guys mentioned earlier, just the cost of everything to a game, so to take a family is an arm and a leg sometimes. And so that's not really great either. So hopefully they can do something to get people.
It's much cheaper to pay $129 for MLB TV.
Yeah, exactly.
For a whole season. Definitely is. One other thing, Scott, that I know we wanted to talk about with the pitch clock itself was if it will actually necessarily speed up the game. Right. And it probably should, but at the same time, how will it affect these pitchers? Pitchers are so routine oriented, and them having to maybe rush to throw a pitch, maybe signals get crossed up a little bit. I think this is going to affect pitchers a lot compared to a hitter where they step out of the box, adjust their gloves, whatever it might be for 5-10 seconds. I don't think it's a big deal, but for these pitchers, it could be a big deal at first.
I think at first is the key word there, because I think they'll adapt. And, if you get it going in the minor leagues, then by the time they get to the big leagues, they're used to it. So I think you probably got to incorporate it there first, is get a get it into the minors so that by the time guys get to the majors, they're used to it and it's not that big a change. But yeah, I'm sure many of them right now, if you threw that on them, guys that's a 10-year vet, that would be really tough, so, but I think you got to incorporate it over time and then it'll become more standard and doable.
I've actually seen it. The Charlotte Knights, I've actually seen the game with a pitch clock. And at first it's kind of unusual, but you actually kind of forget about it. And does it speed the game up? Honestly, not really. But all I got to say is good thing pitchers like Steve Traxel are retired. Remember the human rain delay that take like an hour to just, he was my goodness. Or Nomar Garcia-Parra with his adjusting his batting gloves and all that. I know those days are gone, but
Paul Konerko did that too.
Yeah, or Konerko. So the pitch clock, you get used to it and you kind of just don't see it there. But does it make the speed of the game up? Maybe a minute or so. But to me, honestly, it's doesn't really do much.
Jack.
So Jack, I want to go back to the ghost runner, the automated runner on second. I was hoping when they had that collective bargaining agreement, they get rid of that thing. I've watched that thing. I personally detest it really a lot. I don't know why. I really do. And now all of a sudden the players and the owners like it. Jeez, folks, my goodness, you negotiated to get rid of it, and all of a sudden you got cold feet. So I'm talking to a former MLB player here, Jack Perconte, okay? Give us your opinion on the ghost runner. I mean, you've only written on this stuff all over the place. You have taught it. Is a ghost runner really legit, or get rid of it?
Yeah, that's the one I would get rid of. I've never liked it. And, there might have been a reason for it there with the shortened season, but I don't think that's real baseball at all. That's one that I don't agree with changing. And so I would get rid of it for sure.
Yeah, and then as we lead on to what the pandemic did, we saw the one thing that the pandemic did, COVID-19, it forced us to do a lot of things. Therefore, leading my next point about the 7-inning doubleheaders, I'm glad that we don't have any of those. So, Lou, I know you're nodding your head about the 7-inning doubleheaders. Why don't you go ahead and give us your opinion on the 7-inning doubleheaders? Everybody else can do it. And of course, we want Jack. His opinion is extremely important as well.
Well, first of all, I do want to hit on the ghost runner. It's definitely not baseball. I mean, extra innings is supposed to be exciting. It's not supposed to just end. You're not trying to just get rid of the game and have it end. I mean, a hit to the right side and a sacrifice fly and you score a run, or a wild pitch, and you shouldn't be able to win a game without a hit. Basically, is the biggest thing there. And then with regards to sorry, what did you ask me? This is the second thing, the 7-inning doubleheaders. So it's too much. 9 innings is a baseball game. 7 innings is not a baseball game. And trying to jam in extra games to do it like that just kind of takes away from the game that we know and we love. For me, it's all about 9-inning games. And if they go to extra innings, great. Let's not try and shorten the games. I understand trying to speed up the game, but that doesn't necessarily mean shortening it based on what it's been for over 100 years.
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally with Lou and you, Scott, that, we don't need 7-inning games. And hopefully the DH, may help that, because now you don't have to run through so many pitchers and they can extend a little further. So there's no reason for the 7 innings anyway, if you can keep your pitcher in games longer because of the DH and at least in the National. So hopefully that all help that too. So, but I don't like 7-inning games either.
Well, you're going to go there. You might as well just devalue the no-hitter, because I wouldn't classify a 7-inning no-hitter as an actual no-hitter. I know that was a conversation, Rick Curti and Eric Katz, that was brought up as well. I mean, a no-hitter to me has always been one guy getting it. I don't even like combined no-hitters, Jack, okay? To me, a no-hitter is done by one individual for the duration of 9+ innings. Combined as well as 7-inning no-hitters. All right, guys, let's have a little round table, okay, of the 7-inning / no-hitters. Who wants to take a crack at this first? Since baseball here is around the horn, okay, Eric, you're volunteering with your hand.
I think that, I thought I can understand some of the rules we had in play at the time, though, with the Ghost Runner and also the 7 innings, just because of the pandemic and the situation we were in at the time, because we didn't know what we didn't know about this virus. But now I think the Ghost Runner is a joke. I think 7 inning is not a legit baseball game, and 7 innings. All right, that's basically when. That's 2 less innings a team has to potentially make a comeback. Say it's 4-3 in the 7th inning. By the time you're getting to the stretch, that's when pitchers tend to start to kind of, at least the great pitchers anyway, start to kind of feel it a little bit in the arm, and they start to get a little tired. And that's when that's when other teams start thinking about the bullpen. But 7 inning no hitter, I think that's not legit. You're basically, the pitcher basically has a shortened game. So say a guy like Garrett Cole or Walker Buehler, that's a walk in the park to them. But yeah, 7 inning no hitters, I just like they did with Roger Maris's home run. I put an asterisk on it.
Lou?
Well said by Eric. I mean, you look at I think it was Madison Bumgarner, if I'm not mistaken, last year with the 7 inning no hitter, and there's 2 ways of thought. I mean, it's not a full game, but at the same time, he wasn't even given the chance to pitch the full game. Maybe he gets those final 6 outs and gets the no-hitter. So it's unfair to him, but at the same time, those last 3 outs are the hardest to get. So he never had to go through those last 3 outs in the 9th inning when you're wearing down. All these changes, all these rule changes, and this is going back to the DH, to extra playoff rounds. I mean, all the playoff records have been broken over the last 20 plus years since there was wild cards, and now guys are playing way more playoff games. They're getting more playoff hits and more playoff home runs. Things change with rules. They just need to be sure to make it known that this happened under different rules, like an asterisk, as Eric pointed out, like Roger Maris's home run. They went from 156 games to 162 games. Those are things that do make a big difference. Playoff wins, playoff saves, playoff home runs, they've all gone up because there's at least 3 extra games, if not 5 extra games. And now there's going to be even more with an added playoff team. So the game is changing and everyone's going to have to adapt.
I mean, with the records and stuff that, get set now, especially with, it's, not so much now with baseball, but I think we see it now with football. I don't know how because it makes me wonder, man, what would have done with an extra 2 games? I mean, he could very well do nothing at all, and so be it, fine. But we'll never know. It was like when Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle were going after the home run record in 61. Babe Ruth played in about 154 games at that point. But, 60-plus home runs, you're just thinking, man, Ruth might have been able to hit 75. But knowing Ruth, had he had those extra games. But we'll never know. I just think 7 innings is just not legit. It's, this isn't college. Where they have a 7-inning game on Sunday. But it's, the pitcher has a shortened game. That's 2 less innings he has to throw. We've seen it all the time. In a 9-inning game is a full game. Imagine a 7-inning game where some of these big old comebacks that happen in the 9th inning, a big rally happens. We'll never get to see that if they put up if during that game they put up a goose egg during the 7th inning.
Right. Now, one of my favorite movies was Back to the Future, okay? But since we have a guy who played back in the past, Jack Perconte, on the broadcast, okay, why don't we talk about pitch counts and lack of complete games? Because I know Jack didn't have to really deal with any of them. Nobody was worried about a pitch count. Nobody was worried about, had a lot of complete games. Do you feel that those 2 things in this day and age, Jack, are vastly missing? I've always been a firm believer that a pitcher should be able to go 9, especially if you've gone every 4 or 5 games, and it takes the pressure off the bullpen that you have to wear them out. But, this is a traditionalist question here, Jack, and I don't think there's any more somebody more equipped to answer it. Pitch counts to me seem high at 120, but back then 180 to 200 was the norm. And of course, you had a lot of complete games. So do both of those things hurt the game of baseball?
I think you want to see your stars on the field as much as you can. So if your pitchers are the star, I want to see them in the game, not coming out after 80 pitches. Excuse me, after 80, 90 pitches. But once again, all the research being done, I'm assuming they know more than the traditionalists know, and there's a reason why they're taking these guys out because of numbers. I mean, yeah, there was the greats back in the day that could do it and were, but for every Nolan Ryan, there might have been 10 other guys whose careers got shortened because they burned them out from pitching too much. And I see it in high school. I see kids, they're throwing 120 pitches in high school the first day of the season, and it's like, I don't see how that can be right. So I think we got to find a balance with everything. And, but yeah, like I say, I like seeing the stars stay in the game. That's for sure. But, so it's a difficult question. I'm not sure, what the right answer is.
I'll take a stab at it.
Go ahead, Lou.
Well, first of all, I agree that stars should be the game, but because of the way the game has changed, there's star relievers now. There's big name relievers that come in that people are excited to see. I also believe that guys are just throwing significantly harder. 91, 92 was big time gas, even in the early 90s. If a guy throws 91 or 92 now, he gets knocked in the media and by scouts. Oh, he doesn't have enough gas in his arm. So that's something to consider. When guys are throwing that hard, it does more wear and tear. Medical advancements have shown what the damage is done to these arms. So to protect players, keep them healthy, keep them around all season, keep them ready for deep playoff runs, that's the goal. And analytics tell you, I think we talked about it probably about 20, 30 minutes ago, analytics tell you that even the best starting pitchers struggle a lot more the third or fourth time through a lineup. So the idea is go to someone fresh out of the pen, comes in, throws 95 to 100 with some sort of nasty breaking ball, and they get more outs. They get more strikeouts. And you can see some of the best relievers nowadays throw 80 to 90 innings because some of the top starters might max out at 180 or 185. I think last season there was only 10 pitchers who threw 200 innings. I believe 40 years ago it would have been 5 times that.
Yeah, I think you make good points. I think there's obviously star relievers, but they're usually at the very back end, and teams go through these 6th, 7th, 8th guys or 5th, 6th, 7th guys year after year. There's a big turnover because they burn those guys out after a year or two in the big leagues. So, there's some good and bad with relievers too. They're like you said, they're taught to throw 95, 98, 100 miles an hour. Go in there, throw as hard as you can for 2 innings, and they get 2-year careers, and then they're done, So there's, once again, they got to figure out things, I think, on all that stuff.
Well, that also ties back in the 7-inning doubleheaders when we had them. The biggest point for a good team to kind of rally back would be post-starting pitcher before you get to the back-end bullpen guys. In the 7-inning game, you might get 5 1/3 from your starter or even 6 innings. Then you just get to go right to your beast at the back end. There's not really as much room for mistake. It kind of rewards the teams that aren't as deep in their bullpen and in their pitching staffs. And I don't think that's right either, because the whole idea is this is a team game. And if you can just go, it's not a video game where you pitch your ace and then you go to your best reliever and stamina doesn't matter. It's real life. And being able to go from Garrett Cole to Aroldis Chapman or Jacob deGrom to Edwin Diaz or Walker Buehler to Blake Trinan, whatever it might be, Corbin Burns to Josh Hader. There needs to be something in between. And the teams that have that depth and have great bullpens are missing out on taking advantage of that. And the teams that don't have great bullpens kind of were getting an advantage there. So,
well, it's funny, Lou, you say a mouthful there, and I'm really glad you did. I want to go back to one point about Billy Martin used to go through a lot of pitchers because he did believe in complete games. And I think he'd probably have a hard time managing in this era because of the specialization. That's number one point. I want to get out another thing. And I'm glad you said what you did, Lou, because then all of a sudden you got guys like Josh Hader who could go 2 innings, but then he can't pitch for a day or two. Where back in the day, Jack, you were used to the Raleigh Fingers of the world that could go 2 or 3, no big deal, So there's no question the eras certainly play a lot into philosophical ways that the game is done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed. Things have changed and got to adapt with them, I guess.
I think part of it too is back in the day, starting wise, you started the game and you completed the game. If you only got lifted if the batters were lifting your pitches, that's how it went. And it used to be too, we'd rarely have a star reliever, maybe a closer like Sparky Lyle or Goose Gossage. But nowadays, everybody has a star closer. I mean, I'd probably say Mo christened it, like Mariano Rivera christened it with being the superstar closer. I think he was like the first of his kind at the time.
Trevor Hoffman was ahead of him, but Hoffman didn't have the playoff success, wasn't in the same big market. But you're right.
Right. I'm not taking a dig at Hoff because I really liked Hoff. It was just, Mo obviously pitched in a much bigger market in New York City. Hoffman's teams most of the time, except for maybe a couple seasons, and I think also the World Series year where they went in '98, his teams were never that good. His teams were never consistent at all.
Absolutely. But the thing now is even the teams that don't have a star closer, they have 2 or 3 really good pitchers who all compete for those jobs.
Like the Rays.
And they can be interchangeable. Seattle has 4 guys. The Rays, you mentioned, definitely. The Dodgers have a guy like Blake Trinan, and now they're talking about how they might use Trinan in key situations in the 7th or 8th inning, bring him in 7th inning, bases loaded, 2 outs to get that big out instead of as a closer, because bullpens really control the game now. If you have a good bullpen, you have a chance to win, because even if you're down a run or 2 going into the middle innings and the late innings, your bullpen shuts the door. You can scratch a run or 2 across and take that W.
Well, it used to be I think Jack Jack can probably attest to it during his era. You wanted to get to the bullpen. You knock that superstar out of the bowl game. Well, now you can go now you don't want the bullpen because the guy throws 95 plus too, and he's probably going to be in for a longer career because what does he do? Throw what, every other game?
Yeah, you're right, and you don't see those guys as often. So you might face 3 or 4 different pitchers every game, and they're all got crazy good stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't want to.
The one thing Major League Baseball. Sorry, Jack. I was just going to say the one thing that Major League Baseball has done to at least try to control the advantage of the bullpen is the 3-batter rule. There's not lefty specialists anymore because you don't come in. They can't just face a lefty unless it's the final out of the inning, right? They have to face at least a couple batters. So that has at least kind of made it so that relievers, it's not as easy anymore just to come in, face that one hitter and be done, especially the lefties. So that's something to consider. They have made some rules to kind of, address issues that might have come from the way the game has changed.
Well, it's funny, Lou, how you bring that up, okay? And thanks for bringing it up. I really appreciate it because we talk about extended reliever, and I think Jack could attest to this, right? The 3-batter rule to me kind of makes you think about, the 2 or 3 inning reliever that you're forced to do something that you really have to do over an extended period of time instead of get that one out. So and again, now if we really want to drive ourselves until the year 2023, we could talk about the other rule changes, but we're not going to get too crazy. But I know I have a Mr. Opinion who's absorbing a lot. But when you talk about openers, okay, which I really hate the idea of openers. Jack, did you ever think that you could ever see openers start a game and knowing that you can go 5, 6, 7 deep? I saw a bunch of them at the Miami Marlins game. I'm thinking, holy moly. How do you breed relievers out on the farm? This is just unheard of. Rick, give me your – but then I want to really hear from Jack on this.
Well, I mean, I think the problem with the pitching is that they all want to throw 100 miles an hour. It's like the hitters. They all want to hit the 500-foot home run out of the ballpark, But to me, it's still one home run. These pitchers all want to throw 100, 102 miles an hour. Like, oh wow, look, he threw 101 miles. I could care less. Bring me the days of Greg Maddux. With where you had intelligent pitching, where you use your head instead of like how fast you can throw. And that's what I miss. And the analytics to me is just, I mean, it's too much analytics. I have no problem with it, but when you use it a lot, like a Kevin Cash did, and to me, analytics cost the Tampa Bay Rays a World Series, in my opinion. So, nothing wrong with it, but when you base it entirely on that, and you have all these pitchers that want to throw fast, to me, again, that's not baseball to me at all. So, but I miss Dennis Eckersley. To me, he was one of the best closers I ever saw. Control, he was in there, bang, bang, 12 pitches, you're gone. That's the kind of stuff I miss. Now you see him going 2-3 innings, pitchers going 4 or 5 innings. They're just, it's all about, how hard can I throw? And they just really need to teach the pitchers that it's not all about fastballs. If you want to have a long career, I mean, look at Tim Wakefield with the knuckleballs. So it's to me, it's like hitting the 500-foot home run. Everybody wants to throw 102 miles an hour.
I think baseball has become, with pitchers and batters, it's all or nothing. So home run. I mean, I miss the days of when a guy like Jamie Moore, not a devastating fastball,
Love him.
But man, he pitched well into his 40s. But man, his off-speed stuff, especially his changeup, was just absolutely devastating.
I love Jamie Moyer. I mean, yeah, like Moyer, Greg Maddux. I mean, it's just so many pitchers out there like that, and now you don't see that anymore. They all want to throw 102 miles an hour, and all this stuff, and it's just it's taking the magic out of the game, and the analytics and all that, it's fine and all, but when you put it entirely on it and use too much science and not using your intelligence or your gut feelings, I hated seeing managers, especially Dave Roberts, take out pitchers during a 7th inning because of a no-hitter because he's throwing too much. Let the guy throw the no-hitter. I don't care how many pitches he throws. Let him throw the no. You don't take pitchers out because they're in the middle of a no-hitter because they went past their pitch count. I mean, that's silly. So I mean, let them finish the game, see what happens, and but these pitchers today, they all want to throw 102 miles an hour, and nobody wants to be a Greg Maddux.
Also, don't forget though, has analytics won a World Series? Keep that in mind.
Yeah, or Moneyball. Has Moneyball ever won a World Series? And Moneyball, I'm sorry, is never going to win a World Series. That's why Major League Baseball needs a salary cap.
I mean, the Red Sox may have said to use Billy Beane's strategies. Well, it also helped that they had a roided up David Ortiz, a Manny Ramirez in their lineup, and
money to spend.
Yep.
Yeah,
you can play Moneyball with money, and
money.
It's going to make you better. Analytics, the game is definitely analytic driven at this point, and I don't blame anybody for that because everyone's looking for an edge. Everyone is trying to win. Everyone's trying to find every little edge that they can possibly get. For me, one of the things you brought up, Scott, was the opener. I have no issue with the opener because from an analytics standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. You have one of your top pitchers start the game, go through the 1 through 5, 1 through 6 hitters, then bring in a pitcher who faces 7, 8, 9, faces the 1 through 6 one time, and I can face 7, 8, 9 again, and you're basically through more than half the game already. So there is advantages to it. There's also strategy to it. You start an opener that's a lefty, well, a team might stack righties, and then the guy that follows him is right-handed. The guy that follows him is right-handed, and then suddenly you have all the matchups you want. So there's a lot more to it than just the simple, there's an opener, he's only throwing 1 inning or 5 batters, whatever it might be.
All right, so here's what I want to do. Jack, you've heard what everybody's had to say about these things. Why don't you give me your comments on this? And then I have 3 direct questions I want to get your opinion on. And I know we want to wrap it up pretty soon. Okay. So knowing that I've talked about openers, the 3 batter minimum and all the different changes, again, you played the game back in the 80s and you've been around it for a long time. Why don't you try to do the best you can, Jack, assess each and every point that because I know obviously you've done an incredible job absorbing everything that's been thrown your way. And I know the Olympics are past, but in my opinion, Jack, you deserve a gold medal. I can't give you one, but I can definitely get you dinner in Illinois. So go ahead and try to make a lot of sense of what all of us are throwing your way. I'm sure you probably enjoy all the camaraderie, hearing it from a lot of different places anyway. So,
yeah, I agree with the guys. I mean, you guys probably are bigger fans than me nowadays, but I don't think the opener will ever take off completely because of agents, and wanting their starting pitchers to be starters. And, I don't think you're going to go to a Max Scherzer and say, Max, we're going to start you in the second inning and not start the game. So I think the stars are still going to be your starters, and that'll be the main portion of the game. So I don't think it ever become huge, but once again, if it helps you win some games and you're not starting your stars, then I think it's good strategy if it helps them win. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and it's good. The 3 batter minimum, I think, like you say, I think it was kind of inevitable because it was getting ridiculous that a manager's going out 3-4 times every inning, and for one guy to throw one pitch and then the next guy come in, throw another pitch, and so I think it did the game good to be able to do that. So, yeah, like I say, with everything, I just hope we're heading in the right direction and they're using their best judgment. Analytics, I think we're all kind of, overwhelmed and sick of it, and all the numbers they throw out there. Sometimes all the stats, I have no idea what a lot of them mean, but once again, I hope we find
nobody will win a World Series with analytics. Go tell Kevin Cash that. His analytics cost them the Tampa Bay Rays a World Series.
I don't know if you can blame Kevin Cash for that, though.
The guy was on a roll.
I know, but Rick,
the Dodgers were not touching him.
I understand.
And the next season, he got traded because he was so disgusted. He said, "I'm out of here. Trade me," and they traded him.
You could say the Braves won in analytics. They were getting those relievers, those lefty relievers, in as early as they could in games on those. So. I mean,
all Kevin Cash did, though, was what he had done all season to get them to where they got. All he did was do whatever he had done to get them there. You can't blame him for doing what he had done all season. I understand, and in hindsight now, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback and say, "Oh, he cost them the World Series." But
I thought
his decisions is what got them there.
This guy's on a roll. You don't take out your hottest pitcher, during the World Series because a computer or a stat sheet tells me if they hit him, again in the lineup, they were not going to touch him. He was on a roll, and you just don't do that. So I was like, what is he doing? That was my reaction when I saw that.
Yeah, and that's an old school approach, and that's how I grew up. I would never want to see my top guy go out, but looking at it from the standpoint of Cash just did what he'd been doing all season, I understand the move. And Snell, the real reason behind Snell being traded is nothing to do with that. It's all to do with the fact that he was entering arbitration years and the Rays are cheap. So the Rays capitalized on what they could get. They brought in younger players who are more controllable, where they're not spending big time money. And that's what the Rays do with everybody. That's why Austin Meadows is on the block right now. That's why Margot is on the block right now. That's why they signed Wander Franco now, where they could pay him way below what he's going to be worth in 4 or 5 years. That's the Rays way. And they're doing it well. They're competitive every year.
Yeah. And hindsight is always 20/20 anyway.
So Jack, let's talk about Jack. Okay, the way the game is being played today versus when you played it. Do you like the way the game was being played when you played, or do you like it today? It's a pretty straightforward question.
That's easy for me because I'm a bunt, steal a base, contact, put the ball in play, hit and run. So that was my game. So to not see any of those as part of the game really hurts me. So I don't like that. And like I say, I don't like seeing all the strikeouts. I have trouble watching games a lot of times because I just don't see anything going on. And so that hurts, because baseball's been my life. And so I'd rather go out and watch the kids play where there's more action, and things like that. But hopefully, like I say, I'm not going to give up on it. I hope we find ways to make everything better. I think, as hitters start to see the 95s and 98s more often, I think they'll learn to hopefully adjust to that better. I think that's happening a little bit. So, yeah, it's a process, but yeah, I don't enjoy seeing the game the way it's played now. No.
All right, now I'm going to go ahead and give you a combined question. And one thing I want to make sure I get in here before we call it a night is I enjoy watching Frank Tanana reinvent himself, being a flamethrower to a finesse pitcher. I think that was one of the things that was important. I don't know if you see that nowadays, but I'm going to combine this question, Jack. First of all, when you look at the way the game is being taught, are these players are ready to actually get to the big leagues, or do you feel a lot of first of all, do you feel these guys are being taught right? And then the second part of the question is, are these players ready to get to the big leagues?
Well, I think college has done a pretty good job of, helping kids learn the game more. But yeah, fundamentally, there's just no way they can be as good as I think when we played, in the sense that, I spent 5 years in the minor leagues. And so I feel like I was probably learning the fundamentals and how to play the game maybe a little better than some of the guys that are rushed up there. But once again, the money kind of rules everything, and you put a lot of money into these kids. You want to get them up there as soon as you can. And so it's, I would say fundamentally, they're probably not quite as sound, but not to take anything away from the big leaguers. I think in time, they're just learning on the job more at the big league level than back in my day we learned at the minor league level. So after a few years, hopefully the guys, that don't just get a cup of coffee and last a while, then they play the game fundamentally really well, So, but it's just it's a different game. Getting back to your last question, without a hit and run, without a bunt, without steals, they don't need to learn all that stuff. They just need to learn how to hit the ball over the fence, I guess. So in that regard, it's changed. So
all right, one other comment in the chat room that good old Lou's buddy Mark Pricer mentions there about the ghost runner. I know I want to wrap this up really shortly, though. He said he's good with ghost runners after 11 innings. I kind of agree with it, at least after 11. And they're talking about 96 to 100 is becoming the standard for all pitching. So, and it's just as easy to touch a young prospect to throw harder than smarter. I'd like to mention these because it's interesting when I talk to a baseball person like yourself, Jack, how a lot of these things come into play. I mean, all you guys, let me tell you tonight, brought a lot to the table, and I'm really, really delighted with all the various opinions that we were able to get on the Sports Exchange. Just so you know, folks, the Sports Exchange can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, or subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And it can be seen on www.southfloridatribune.com. With that said, as time comes to an end, first of all, Jack, I want to let everybody know how they can go ahead and purchase your books. I think that's important for you, and then everybody else have an opportunity to mention where they can get a hold of them as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. And it was a pleasure and a lot of fun. And the time really flew. Didn't know it would go this fast. So that's great. My books, you can get them on Amazon. That's probably the easiest thing. So I would just refer everybody to Amazon if they want to read more. I have a blog I put out every week at jackperconte.com that some people might enjoy. It's trying to figure out how people are successful, the road to success. And that's kind of what the blog is about, trying to figure out, how we get through life and get through sports. And so that would be on my website, jackperconte.com.
So, Jack, have you ever been on a show where you had this many different opinions from so many different characters? Because Lou Landers, to me, if you ever get into fantasy baseball, he's going to have a chance to say it in a little bit. This guy, we have a guy that Mr. Opinion who'll say whatever the heck he wants. Eric Katz is
I'm a traditionalist.
Well, that's it. He is. He knows a lot more than meets the eye. He's definitely an unnatural broadcaster, Rick Curti, but that's beside the point. Okay, Eric Katz is that kind of guy in the middle, and Lou Landers, to me, knows a lot about fantasy and knows a ton of stuff. And I hear I'm tooting these guys, but have you ever been on a show with so many different personalities that do so many different things?
Yeah, I probably have at one point, but it's just fun, to hear different views. And it's not like anybody's right or wrong, right? We just all have different opinions. And I think we all want to see baseball keep growing and be better in the future than it has been. So I think we all have the same intentions, just maybe different ways of going about it.
Great perspective. All right, Mr. Opinion, why don't you give everybody quickly how they can get a hold of you?
My website is www.charlottebats.com. My email address is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com for any questions or comments you want to leave. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB, and I'm also on there at Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Instagram at Charlotte Bats. I'm on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball, and I'm also on LinkedIn, Rick Curti, Curti, and you can contact me anytime on those social media websites.
And Jack, if you didn't figure it out by now, with Rick Curti, he wants Major League Baseball in Charlotte. Just to give you the
Charlotte and Nashville, they're coming.
Right, there you go.
There we
All right,
go.
Eric Katz is a no because he should have put concrete dump on there earlier. Just we need to find Olympic Stadium. Give him a brief, and then we're gonna save Lou for last. Well,
let me explain that reference to Jack. It was in reference to the Montreal Expos stadium up until they moved to Washington.
I got you.
Yep. You can find me on Twitter at Sports Team News. I write for BellyUpSports.com covering Wisconsin Badgers football.
All right. Well, Lou Landers, he's the man here that has. I love when Lou tells me that he knows more after the 80s, than anybody else. And then I bring on a guest here like Jack, who's so been into it for a lot of years. But all right, Lou, take it away.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Landers Talks. You can find me on Facebook, Lou Landers. I do the Counting Stats podcast, the Lucas Baseball podcast. Once the regular season begins for daily fantasy sports players, I have Lou's Locks podcast. You can find me on Sports Byline USA Armed Forces Network and every Sunday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern on the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Channel.
So I guess the biggest understatement that Lou just said is he's busy. And the guy finds time to work with me and give me a little bit of information. All right, just give you an overview real quick before we call it a night. As I mentioned before, you can hear the audio version of this broadcast on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. You can find it there. You can find it at www.southfloridatribune.com. And yes, we have a Twitter account. So there you go, Jack. And FYI, when you go on Twitter, you can find us at Tribune South, and you can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Well, all I can tell you, it's been an absolutely wonderful show. I couldn't be more blessed to have 5 outstanding individuals talking about the great American pastime. I know we covered a lot of different things, and I think you guys are hanging in there with us. And more importantly out there, Mark Pricer, thanks for being on here a lot. And for all you folks that watch and listen in to this show, because you know what? Without you, it's not fun, because we're here to aim to entertain and inform. And I hope we accomplish that objective tonight. So meanwhile, on behalf of Jack Perconte, Rick Curti, Eric Katz, Lou Landers at Landers Talks, my name is Scott Morgan, Route the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange. And Jack, we hope you join us down the road. But meanwhile, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you very much, Jack. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Pleasure was all mine.